She needed a working car. He needed a reason to keep going. Neither of them expected to find hope under the hood of a dying engine. But one act of kindness spiraled into something greater, a community revived. A family held together, and a promise finally fulfilled. All because one mechanic said yes when it mattered most. Jade Monroe turned the key in her car's ignition for the third time, listening to the silence that followed each failed attempt. Nothing, not even the courtesy of a sputter, just the hollow click of a battery that had finally given up. Come on, she whispered, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. The dashboard clock read 7:42 a.m. Her interview was at 10, and it was the kind of opportunity that came once in a lifetime. A marketing coordinator position at a law firm, complete with health insurance, a retirement plan, and a salary that would finally let her breathe again. "Mommy, why isn't the car working?" Riley's voice drifted from the back seat, sweet and innocent against the panic rising in her mother's chest. Jade caught her 6-year-old daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror. Riley had already seen too much disappointment. Too many promises broken by circumstances beyond anyone's control. Her dark curls were messy from sleep, and she clutched her worn stuffed elephant. "It's just being stubborn today, baby," Jade said, forcing a smile. "We'll figure it out." But as she pulled out her phone to check her bank balance, the familiar knot in her stomach tightened. $67.33. That was all that stood between them and the end of the month. A tow truck would cost more than she had, and a taxi to the interview would wipe out what little remained. The sound of metal clanging drew her attention to the garage across the street. An auto repair shop had been there for as long as anyone could remember, though Sam Delgado himself had only taken over the business 3 years ago when his uncle retired. The man was a mystery to most of the neighborhood, quiet, gruff, and seemingly determined to keep everyone at arm's length. Jade had heard the stories, of course. A former Army mechanic who'd lost his son in a car accident. Started drinking too much, couldn't hold down a job at the bigger shops, so his uncle threw him a lifeline. The gossip mill painted him as unstable, unreliable, someone to be avoided. But right now, he was the only mechanic within walking distance. "Stay here, okay?" Jade told Riley. "I'm going to ask that man for help." The garage smelled of motor oil and old coffee. Sam was bent over a pickup truck's engine, his dark hair streaked with premature gray, hands stained with grease. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe late 30s, but carried himself with the weight of someone who'd seen too much. "Excuse me," Jade called out. Sam looked up, brown eyes taking in her interview outfit. A thrift store navy blazer pressed until it looked almost new, paired with her only good pair of heels. "We're not open yet," he said, turning back to his work. "I know, I'm sorry. But my car won't start, and I have an important interview this morning. I was hoping maybe you could take a quick look. Lady, I've got 3 cars ahead of you and parts on backorder. The earliest I can get to it is next week." Jade felt her composure cracking. "Please, I'm begging you. This job could change everything for me and my daughter. I can pay you whatever you think is fair." "Next week," Sam repeated, his tone final. Jade stood there for a moment, watching him work, feeling the weight of rejection settle on her shoulders like a familiar coat. She'd grown used to it over the years, the closed doors, the sympathetic smiles that led nowhere. "Fine," she said quietly. "I understand." She was halfway back to her car when she heard Sam's voice behind her. "Hey!" Jade turned to find him standing in the doorway of his garage, wiping his hands on a rag. His gaze had shifted to her car, where Riley's small face was pressed against the window. watching the exchange with wide, curious eyes. The little girl waved at Sam, and something in his expression shifted a crack in the armor he'd built around himself. "How old is she?" he asked. "6," Jade replied, unsure why he was asking. Sam stared at Riley for a long moment and let out a heavy sigh, popped the hood. "Let me take a look." The relief that flooded through Jade was so intense it made her dizzy. "Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet," Sam muttered, walking over to her car. "Might be something I can't fix quickly." But as he examined the engine, checking connections and testing the battery, Jade could see the competence in his movements. This was someone who understood machines, who could coax life from metal and wire when others saw only junk. "Your alternator's shot," he said after a few minutes. "Battery's dead because of it. I got one in the shop that'll fit, but it's gonna cost you." "How much?" Sam was quiet for a moment, his eyes drifting to Riley again. The little girl had rolled down the window and was leaning out, fascinated by the mechanical mysteries unfolding before her. 200, he said finally. "Parts and labor." Jade's heart sank. I can't afford that right now. But I swear I'll pay you back." Sam studied her face, seeing the desperation there, the pride that was slowly crumbling under the weight of everyday life. He'd seen that look before. In the mirror, in the faces of his army buddies who'd come home to find their old lives no longer fit, who'd fought tooth and nail to defend a country that didn't recognize them when they returned. It was almost as if they were born to be on the front lines, where things made sense in a brutal sort of way. Everyday life was the real battle. "What time's your interview?" he asked. 10 o'clock. Sam glanced at his watch. "I can get you running by 9:30. We'll figure out the money later." For the next hour, Jade sat in Sam's cluttered office while he worked on her car. Riley had somehow charmed her way into the garage, asking endless questions about engines and tools while Sam worked with quiet efficiency. The little girl seemed fascinated by everything the hydraulic lift, the rows of spare parts, the way Sam could make her car come alive again with just his hands and some metal. "My mommy says cars are like people," Riley announced, perched on a workbench and swinging her legs. "They get sick sometimes, but they can get better." Sam glanced up from the engine. "That's a smart way to think about it." "Are you sick?" Riley asked with the blunt honesty that only children possess. The question hung in the air like smoke. Sam's hand stilled on his wrench, and for a moment Jade thought he might not answer. "Sometimes," he said finally, "but I'm getting better." When Sam finished the repair, he refused to take any money up front. Instead, he scribbled his phone number on a piece of paper and handed it to Jade. "Call me when you get the job," he said. "We'll work something out. What if I don't get it?" "Then we'll still work something out." Jade made it to her interview with 20 minutes to spare. The office was everything she'd dreamed of: clean, professional, full of people who looked like they'd never worried about choosing between groceries and rent. She answered their questions with confidence, drawing on every ounce of experience she'd gained from years of juggling multiple jobs and responsibilities. When they offered her the position on the spot, she had to excuse herself to the bathroom to cry. The job was everything she'd hoped for and more: good salary, benefits, and opportunity for advancement. There was just one catch: the position required her to relocate to their Chicago office within 60 days. "Is that going to be a problem?" asked Mrs. Henderson, the firm's managing partner. Jade thought about Riley, about the life they'd built in their small town. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Still, this was the break they'd been waiting for. "No problem at all," she said, shaking hands with her new boss. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Jade threw herself into her new job, working longer hours than she'd ever worked before, but for better pay than she'd ever imagined. She was able to pay Sam back for the car repair within the first week. But when she showed up at his garage with the money, she found him working on Mrs. Miller's ancient compact car. Mrs. Miller was 83 years old and lived on Social Security. Her car was older than some of the buildings in town, but it was her only means of getting to doctor's appointments and the grocery store. "How much do I owe you, Sam?" Mrs. Miller asked, counting out wrinkled bills from her purse with arthritic fingers. "Just the cost of the part," Sam said, not meeting her eyes. $20. Jade knew enough about car repairs to know that Sam was charging for parts only, not labor. She watched him help Mrs. Miller to her car, his gruff exterior melting away as he made sure she was comfortable behind the wheel. "That was nice of you," Jade said when Mrs. Miller had driven away. Sam shrugged. The engine wasn't that bad. Didn't take long. But Jade had seen Sam spend 3 hours on what should have been a simple repair, cleaning, and adjusting components that didn't need cleaning, making sure the old compact car would run for another year at least. Over the next few weeks, Jade noticed a pattern. Sam often worked on cars for people who clearly couldn't afford full price. Single moms, elderly folks, struggling families. He stretched parts, made repairs that lasted longer than expected, and only charged for materials when labor was the real cost. It was in her 3rd week at work that Jade met Jared Quinn. Quinn ran the biggest used car lot in town, a cluttered maze of vehicles, many barely roadworthy. He was Sam's cousin, though their resemblance stopped at build. Where Sam was calm and capable, Quinn was loud and slick. Sam helped people. Quinn seemed to exploit them. "You're Jade Monroe," Quinn said, sliding into her diner booth uninvited. "Heard you landed that fancy job downtown." "Word travels fast," Jade said, not eager for small talk. "Small town," Quinn grinned. "Heard you got tangled up with my cousin Sam. Hope he's treating you right." Something about his tone put her on edge. "He fixed my car. Very professional." "Oh, I bet. Sam's always been the helper type. Too helpful, really." Jade didn't want to ask, but Quinn kept talking. "Take Mrs. Miller. That car of hers should have been junked years ago. But Sam keeps patching it up for next to nothing, like he's doing her a favor." "Maybe he is." "Kindness?" Quinn scoffed. "Helping someone make smart choices is kind. What Sam does, it's not sustainable. Not for him, and not for them." After he left, Jade lingered in the diner, thinking. She'd seen Sam's kindness up close, but she'd also noticed the heaviness in him, the way he sometimes stared off, lost in something she couldn't see. That evening, Jade found herself driving past Sam's garage. The lights were still on, and through the windows, she saw him hunched over a family minivan. It was after 9 well past closing. Like he wasn't just fixing cars, but trying to mend something deeper. Riley had been asking about him nonstop since he'd fixed their car. "When will we see the car doctor again?" she'd ask. "Can we bring him cookies? Does he have a little girl like me?" That last question always hit Jade hard. Word around the neighborhood was Sam once had a little boy, Eric. Just 5 when he died in an accident. Sam had been deployed, unable to make it home for the funeral. The knowledge weighed on her as she watched him. Was Quinn right? Was Sam's generosity just grief in disguise? And if it was, did that make it any less real? He'd kept Mrs. Miller's car running, the Hernandez family's truck on the road, Matthew commuting to the factory. Still, could it last? The answer came 2 weeks later in the form of a phone call. Mrs. Monroe? This is Detective Sheila Walsh with Family Court. We need to discuss your custody arrangement. Jade's stomach dropped. What about it? Your ex-husband has filed a petition to modify custody. He's alleging your current living situation is unstable and that you've exposed your daughter to individuals of questionable character. The words hit like a punch. Marcus, her ex, barely saw Riley and only paid support when pressed. Yet somehow, here he was, threatening her stability. What individuals? A Samuel Delgado. He claims Mr. Delgado has been drinking around your daughter, and that his presence demonstrates poor judgment. Jade's head spun. That's not true. Sam's been nothing but kind and professional. I'm just relaying the allegations. You'll need to respond within 30 days. I suggest hiring an attorney. Jade sat in silence long after the call ended. Riley was at school, unaware her world might be upended. A lawyer would cost money she didn't have. And she knew how easily Marcus's version could gain traction. Sam was a recovering alcoholic. That much was clear in his careful speech, his guarded manner. But in court, those details could be twisted, made to look dangerous. Yet the Sam she knew was gentle, patient with Riley, careful around her. Nothing about him resembled the man Marcus was painting. The cruel irony? Sam's kindness, the thing that helped her stand, might now be what tore her family apart. That evening, Jade drove to Sam's garage. As always, he was working alone, soft music playing in the background. When he looked up and saw her, his face lit up in a way that made her chest tighten. Jade, Riley's not with you? She's at home. Homework. Jade drew a deep breath. Sam, I need to talk to you. She told him everything Marcus's custody petition. The accusations, the impossible choice she was facing. As she spoke, Sam's face grew solemn, guarded. I see, he said quietly. So you want me to stay away? I don't want that, Jade replied quickly. But if I lose custody... You won't, Sam said. You're a great mom. Anyone can see that. Marcus has resources money, a house, a stay-at-home wife. He looks good on paper. Sam worked silently for a moment, hands moving out of habit. Then he looked up. Maybe he's right. Don't say that. Jade, I'm a 40-year-old man living above a garage, haunted by nightmares, 14 months sober and counting. Your ex might be a jerk, but he's not wrong. I am a risk. The next morning brought more trouble. At work, Jade found 3 voicemails from local news stations. Almost certainly Marcus is doing. Word had spread about Sam's low-cost repairs, and reporters wanted a feel-good story. But they also wanted the man behind it, his past, his pain, his reputation. A human interest piece. The Channel 7 reporter explained. Local mechanic helping families. We'd love to speak to some of the people he's helped. Jade thought of Mrs. Miller, the Hernandez family. Publicity could boost Sam's business or ruin him. That night brought the answer. A segment aired, and it was a mess. Instead of celebrating Sam's kindness, the reporter dug into his past, his military service, his son's death, his sobriety. The tone was pitying, painting Sam not as a hero, but as a broken man clinging to purpose. By morning, 3 regular customers had canceled. Rumors were spreading. Sam was unstable, a liability. Jade found him in the garage, staring at his half-empty appointment book. I'm sorry, she said. I never meant for this. It's not your fault, he said, voice flat. Quinn called this morning, offered to buy me out. You're not actually considering it, Sam shrugged. Might be the smart move. Hard to help people if I can't pay the bills. What about Mrs. Miller? The Hernandez family? The people who count on you? They'll manage. Probably find better mechanics. Jade wanted to shake him, make him see how much he mattered. But his eyes said it all. He'd started to believe what others were saying. That night, Jade made a decision. One that would change everything. Instead of heading home after work, Jade drove to the community center, where she knew a small support group gathered weekly. Mrs. Miller had told her about it, locals who'd benefited from Sam's generosity, now meeting to share resources and encouragement. The group was small, maybe 15 people, seated in a circle of folding chairs. Jade recognized several faces. Mrs. Miller, Maria Hernandez, and her son, and Matthew from the factory. We need to do something, Jade said, skipping any pleasantries. Sam's in trouble because he's been helping us. She explained everything. The custody battle, the damaging news story, Quinn's buyout offer. Around the room, expressions shifted from concern to indignation. That's not right, Maria said. Sam kept our truck on the road. We would have lost it without him. He's helped everyone here, Matthew added. We can't let him sink. What followed was a groundswell of grassroots action, the kind that only happens when a community truly rallies. Mrs. Miller, despite her years, turned out to be a powerhouse organizer. Within days, they launched a campaign to support Sam's garage with more than just kind words. They reached out to neighbors and coworkers, built a simple website highlighting Sam's work and testimonials from those he'd helped, organized a community Fix-It Day, offering basic car services with proceeds going directly to the shop. Then Jade had an idea she hadn't seen coming. During a meeting with her boss to discuss a possible transfer to Chicago, Mrs. Henderson brought up the firm's corporate social responsibility program. We're always looking for meaningful ways to support working families, she said. What if I told you I knew a mechanic who's been doing just that? Jade asked, quietly helping low-income families keep their cars running and their lives on track. All he needs is support. Mrs. Henderson leaned in. That's exactly the kind of program we want to fund. 2 weeks later, the firm formally launched the Community Auto Care Initiative, pledging sponsorship to help low-income families with essential car repairs, with Sam as the lead mechanic. The program was simple. Families in need could apply for assistance, and if approved, they'd receive vouchers for essential repairs. Sam would be paid full market rates, while families paid only what they could afford, the sponsor covering the rest. It was everything Sam had already been doing, but now with structure, funding, and long-term viability. When Jade pitched it to him, he was wary. Sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? No catch, just paperwork. You'd need to document your work, report who you're helping, and keep proper records. Sam hesitated. And your boss is okay with my history? Mrs. Henderson thinks it makes you perfect. Her words, someone who's overcome struggles understands what it means to need help. For the first time in weeks, Jade saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. The custody hearing was set for a Friday in November. Jade had scraped together enough to hire Patricia Chun, a compassionate but fierce family attorney known for fighting hard. Marcus showed up looking polished, with a high-powered lawyer at his side. Mrs. Monroe, his attorney began, isn't it true you've exposed your daughter to a man with a history of alcoholism and emotional instability? Jade's palms sweated. Sam Delgado has only ever been kind and professional with us. But you admit he's a recovering alcoholic? I acknowledge he's overcome hardship and used it to help others. The questioning dragged on, painting Jade as irresponsible. Sam is unstable and Riley as unsafe. But then Patricia stood and called her first witness. Mrs. Miller stepped slowly to the stand, cane tapping. Her voice, though aged, rang with conviction. "I've lived here 60 years. I've seen a lot. Sam Delgado is one of the good ones. Any child would be lucky to know him." She was followed by Maria Hernandez, then Matthew, then 6 others, each testifying to Sam's character, his compassion, and the difference he'd made. But the most powerful testimony came from someone no one expected. "I'd like to call Samuel Delgado to the stand," Patricia said. Sam rose with quiet composure, dressed in his best shirt. Hands scrubbed clean of grease. When he swore to tell the truth, his voice didn't waver. "Mr. Delgado," Patricia began, "the opposing counsel claims your past makes you unfit to be around children. How do you respond?" Sam paused, glancing at Jade in the gallery. "I lost my son," he said. "Eric was 5. I was deployed overseas and couldn't even attend his funeral. When I got back, I fell apart. I drank. I couldn't keep a job. I couldn't keep myself together. The room was still. But I got help. I've been sober for 14 months. I go to meetings. I work with a counselor. And I've found that helping others helps me. Fixing cars for people who need them, single moms, the elderly, folks struggling to get by. It's how I honor Eric's memory. It's how I try to be the man he would have been proud of." He turned to Marcus. "I would never put Riley in danger. She reminds me of Eric Bright, curious, always asking questions. Being around her has helped me heal, and I believe I've been a good influence in her life. I've shown her that people can change, that kindness matters, that no one should face their struggles alone." When Sam finished, the courtroom was silent, and no one was dry-eyed. Less than an hour later, the judge returned with her decision. Custody would remain with Jade. Marcus's visitation rights would stay as they were. While Mr. Delgado's past raises valid concerns, the judge said, his current stability and contributions to the community are clear. The court finds no evidence that he poses a risk to the minor. Quite the opposite, his presence appears to be a positive one. That evening, Jade and Riley returned to Sam's garage, but this time they weren't there for a repair. "We brought you a present," Riley announced, hopping onto the workbench with a plate of cookies. "Mommy said you helped us today." Sam smiled, his whole face softening. "Thank you, Riley. That means a lot. Are you still going to fix cars?" she asked. "For as long as people need them," he replied. "Good," she said firmly. "Cars need car doctors, just like people need people doctors." As Jade watched them, she knew Quinn had been wrong. Sam wasn't enabling people. He was lifting them up. He wasn't fixing cars. He was restoring hope. The Community Auto Care Initiative launched the next month. In its first year, it helped over 200 families, keeping parents employed, seniors independent, and young people on the move. Sam's garage became more than a repair shop. It became a symbol of what's possible when a community looks out for its own. The program drew interest from other towns, corporations, and mechanics eager to replicate its success. But for Jade, the real victory was quieter, more personal. The day she made her final decision about the Chicago job. Mrs. Henderson was still waiting patiently. "The offer stands," her boss reminded her. "Salary, benefits, everything." "I'm honored," Jade said, "but I'm staying. This community gave my daughter and me a second chance. I want to give back." Mrs. Henderson smiled knowingly. "I thought you might say that, which is why I've proposed opening a satellite office here, with you managing our outreach programs, including the Auto Care Initiative. Interested?" Jade's new role allowed her to work alongside Sam, expanding the program, securing funding, and telling the stories that mattered. She discovered a talent for grant writing, for connecting with donors, and for building something lasting. But the biggest change was in Sam. A solitary mechanic now led a team of 3. The man who once kept to himself now spoke at local events. The grieving father had become a quiet force of healing. The pain hadn't vanished. Sam still had tough days. But he'd learned to turn his sorrow into service and his guilt into purpose. One spring evening, Jade found him sitting outside the garage, watching the sunset color the sky in warm streaks. "Good day?" she asked, taking a seat on the bench she'd built from salvaged parts. "Good day," he nodded. "Fixed Mrs. Miller's transmission. Got the Hernandez van running. Helped Matthew with his brakes." They sat in silence, listening to children's laughter echo through the streets and families chatting on porches. "You know what I realized today?" Sam said. "I spent years thinking I was broken, but maybe we're all just ongoing projects. Cars need maintenance. People need care. Communities need tending. It's not about being perfect. It's about being willing to keep going." Jade thought of her own journey, from survival to stability to purpose. None of it easy. All of it worth it. "Riley asked me today if you were going to be around forever." "What did you say?" "I told her forever's a long time, but some people are worth betting on." Sam smiled genuinely. "What did she say to that?" "She said good, she's got a lot more questions about engines." They laughed, their voices blending with the hum of the evening. That night, Sam walked to the Hilltop Cemetery, a place he'd avoided for 3 years. Lately, he visited more often. He knelt at the small headstone that read, "Beloved son," hands stained with honest work, heart finally steady. "I got it right this time, my love," he whispered. "I finally got it right." The wind stirred the trees above, carrying the quiet sounds of life below, cars rolling, windows lit, laughter drifting through the air. It was the sound of a community that had healed alongside him. A town held together not by perfection, but by people showing up for each other. Sam's promise had been simple. Fix what's broken. Help where you can. Be the man his son would have been proud of. In doing so, he'd repaired far more than engines. He'd helped mend lives. He'd mended his own. And in the garage below, the tools waited. Tomorrow, someone would need help. And Sam would be there, because he chose to be.